I'm very glad that this is happening because so many observers have come forward and been ridiculed during the years.
Yeah.
And they are just telling what they saw. Of course, they don't know what they saw. But their stories, I mean, you must listen to them. You cannot just laugh at them. You must take them seriously, see if you can find an explanation, and treat them properly. And now this is really going to go in that direction, thanks to the politicians and what's happening in the US.
Did you think that would happen in your lifetime?
No, really not. This is exciting.
Yeah.
This is the most exciting part of this story, really, that we now can discuss UFOs in a proper manner. I mean, UFOs are just unidentified flying objects. I want to know what lies behind that. And of course, many people would like to know that. So now we can discuss it.
Yeah. Welcome to Mind the Shift. I am Anders Bolling. One of the most persistent existential questions is, are we alone in the universe? Whether this is a spiritual question or not is up to the person asking the question, I suppose. At any rate, there's no doubt that this question entails tons of plain old physics. So in this episode, we'll look out into space and talk about UFOs, or UAPs, as the US authorities prefer to call them these days. My guest today is Clas Svahn, a former colleague and a friend. He is a journalist and a writer, but he's also known in Sweden and beyond as a leading UFO expert. Claus is International Director of UFO Sweden, an organization that he chaired for 22 years. He's written dozens of books about mysteries and unexplained phenomena, not only UFOs, but other phenomena as well. And he is an avid blogger. Welcome, Claus.
Thank you, Anders. Nice to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So why UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena? Why did they change from UFO? What's the point of that?
Yeah, that's a good question, really, because UFOs was coined by the American Air Force in the 1950s. So UFO is an American term from the American military. Now they have changed that to UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. And of course, they want to put the stigma that comes along with UFOs as far away from them as they could. Because in UFOs, you can find everything from abductions, cattle mutilations, crop circles, anything really that is connected to the notion that we are visited by some aliens.
Okay, so crop circles are part of the UFO term as well?
Well, many people believe, it's strange. Everything is strange when it comes to this. But of course, some people think that they are traces or messages, rather, left for us to decipher from alien beings. So it's a very broad topic, of course. But the American military wants to get rid of all that and focus on their own pilots, their own military personnel's observations, and have narrowed it down to this UAP stuff. So I think it's wise, because they will be swamped with observations if they didn't do that.
Okay, I understand. So UAPs are basically the same thing as UFOs, I mean, from the perspective of the US military, but they want to kind of... what did you call it? Get rid of the stigma coming from UFO term.
And it's interesting, I should note that in 1983, UFO Sweden met with one of the top military advisors, astronomer J. Allen Hynek, who was investigating UFOs for the US military. And he was at that time proposing to us that changed the term to UAP in 1983. So it's not new in any way, but it's new that this will probably be the acronym used from now on.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so let's begin with the most topical topic, so to speak. As we record this, this very much anticipated report from the U.S. government has not yet arrived, but we think that it's gonna be released before the end of June, possibly June 25th, which is tomorrow from the day that we're recording this. And it is I understand that some information trickled out earlier this month when Congress got to read the secret parts of this report, didn't
Yeah.
it? So what do we know so far?
What happened early this month was that some of the members of the intelligence committees in the House were briefed. I don't think they ever got to read anything. They were only briefed by personnel from the U.S. Navy and the FBI, and also the director for the UAPTF, the task force that is now committed to bring this documentation to the Congress in a couple of days, or maybe tomorrow from today. And what they did get to know was that in this report, around 120 observations have been investigated. I should really stress that it's impossible that within 180 days, that is the time frame that this task force has had to investigate 120 reports. It's impossible. So I'm not really sure how deep they will go into this, but there is so many, and about half of them, it's said, will be still unidentified. And it's also in the report that they have not been able to pinpoint the source from many of those observations.
So what is it that these pilots have recorded, really? We'll try to, in the video version, we try to edit in some pictures so the viewers can see what they look like. But just talk about it. What is it?
It's very dramatic. You hear their voices and they're wowing and look at that thing and it's rotating and, well, they are really excited.
Dude, there's nothing going on, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. Oh my gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots to the west. Look at that thing, dude.
So they see unknown, quite small objects, probably not more than a couple of meters, that are flying in very strange ways, and they are filming them with those infrared cameras that they have on board of those F-18 Hornets. And at one point, one of those objects leaves the screen very, very fast. And that is from an observation from 10 years ago, west of California, outside in the ocean, when the carrier USS Nimitz got radar returns that were very, very strange for several days. And at one point, they also met those objects in the sky.
Okay.
So one of the pilots, he saw one of those objects down just above the surface. And he later on called it the tic-tac, shaped like a tic-tac, as an oval, oblong thing. And this strange tic-tac craft, it flew in a circular motion, and he was trying to fly after it. But suddenly it went away. And at that point, he was out of fuel. He and his wingman had to return to the carrier. And another pilot went after this. And the object suddenly appeared at a point where those pilots had a rendezvous point. So it knew where the American aircraft were heading. But at this point, the other pilot could film this object. And in the end of that film, you can see the object going away very fast.
Okay.
So they are very strange. And other pilots have said that they have seen those objects every day for several years.
Every day for several years, and before this, before they were able to record this tic-tac object, the carrier had, as you said, detected it on radar for a long time, and they didn't understand what was happening. Was just the radar behaving strangely, or did they actually see some kind of object on the radar?
We don't really exactly know. We haven't seen anything, any film clips or anything from that. But the story goes that they did see objects coming down from very, very high altitudes, going down to the surface and suddenly stop. And at that point, when they are traveling down, they are surpassing, I don't know how many Mach, but maybe too many times the sound barrier that a human being can withstand. So if there was an object, they were not manned, not by us. Anyway.
Not man-made, or at least no human beings in it.
No, it couldn't be, absolutely.
Perhaps it could be some kind of a drone or something?
Absolutely. That's what the military really are looking into. And as early as 2017, the first really serious attempt to try to see who were flying over the US came out from I think it was a high-ranking military that had seen so many reports about drone-like objects over US territory that he asked that this must be looked into.
Mm.
So that was the embryo to this report that was okayed by the Congress last summer and was signed by Donald Trump in late December. And now, 180 days after his signature was put on that paper, we will see the result of it.
Mm. Super interesting. What makes these? You've talked a little bit about it, but what makes these objects interesting? What properties do they have that tell us that these are probably not man-made?
One of the properties are those fast-moving, descending when they're going down to the surface of the sea, in a way that we don't know how they do it. It's too fast. Another one is a film coming out from another American ship outside California, close to California. The USS Omaha. It was in July, 17th of July 2019. And there you can see an object, one of 14 objects that were picked up by the radar, going around in an erratic motion over the ocean and suddenly descending and vanishing
into the sea,
beneath the surface. And that is not something that the Americans can do themselves. And we don't know about any kind of engineering that could make a flying object suddenly turn into a submarine. We don't have that at this time, as we know.
Yeah, and according to what the congressmen have told the media from the information that they got, this is the U.S. government has said clearly that this is not U.S. technology.
Yeah, they have said that, and that is very interesting, of course. I mean, if half of the observations are not known and they are not from the US. I talked with the assistant chief of the Swedish Air Force a couple of weeks ago, and he thought they could be secret US technology. That was his take on it. I'm not sure that he has any insight into this at all, but that was what he thought.
So that the U.S. government would be lying about this?
Or maybe it's very much compartmentalized and they don't know what the other branch is doing. And of course, if they are super secret about something very new, they could lie about it. On the other hand, why do you fly those stuff around their own carriers?
Exactly.
And
that's very difficult.
Making all this commotion. I mean, there's so many things that are really unknown in this.
What about the Russians and the Chinese? Have they said anything about this?
No, they haven't, and it's really strange. I mean, one wonders if Biden and Putin did talk about this.
That's true. Yeah.
Which they should have, I think. I mean, it would have been very strange if Biden wouldn't have brought it up. But we don't know that, and nothing has leaked. They have not said anything really, and if it is Russia or China, they have taken a very, very big leap in technology. If we are to rely on the reports, of course. We haven't seen the data behind those stories yet. We have heard the stories, but not seen any hard data.
Somebody said that if let's say the Russians or the Chinese have developed this technology, and they probably would have been doing that for decades then, this would be a game changer, and it would be possible to construct weapons that are so dangerous and so superior that there would be really no point in spending billions and billions of dollars on conventional weapons and conventional military, which they are doing.
Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah, you're right. Of course. I mean, it's a leap that is like the moon landing or whatever. When that happened, it's a game changer, of course. But again, we must really see the hard data, and the hard data will probably not be disclosed to us because there will be a secret part of this report, and the secret part of this report will contain what kind of radar they used, the figures, and all the hard stuff they analyzed. What we will get to know is what people saw and the observations and what they did, not how they did it.
Mm.
So there will be questions, and I read today in Politico an interview with Marco Rubio, and Marco Rubio said that he don't think that this will really be as interesting as many people expect. It will not be this UFO hype.
Okay.
So many of those senators are trying to downplay the report, and maybe it's the right thing to do, because I don't think the report will give us the answers, only new questions.
Okay. One person who has been talking a lot about this report and been in the media a lot, whom I know that you know, Lou Elizondo. He was the head of the so-called AATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, during 10 years, and then he quit, I think, in 2017, and he's been in the media a lot, and he's been, as I said, interviewed a lot. And what does he think about this? What does he think that this is?
Yeah, I made a long interview with Lou Elizondo in February 2018, I think, and then after that we have been in contact. And he is on the outside. He's a very, very serious and very knowledgeable, and very, very secure about keeping this distance to what is happening now. He does that. He's good at that. But he believes in quite a lot of paranormal stuff also, and he can see other explanations than, I think, extraterrestrials, which is also, of course, very much out on a limb when it comes to a former CIA guy like Lou. So I think you really expect this to be something really, really, really strange. That is his take on it. Not officially, but he really wants it to be that. And he has done so much TV series and other commercial stuff when it comes to UFOs during the last 2 years. And of course, that's his way to earn his living now.
Yeah.
He's got no job in the military, but he says also that he will not say too much. He will not give away what the military may know, because he wants to be able to get back into the military.
Yeah. So he knows more than he tells. Probably. I mean, after he was for 10 years the head of this special branch under the Pentagon or the CIA?
Well, it was under the Pentagon, but it was outsourced, and this group outsourced the real investigations to Bigelow, to the aerospace mogul that Robert Bigelow. So Bigelow, his industries, he made the hard work on UFO observations, and Bigelow himself used the largest UFO organization in the US, MUFON, Mutual UFO Research Organization. So, and that is very strange. I mean, here we have Pentagon, here we have Lou Elizondo, we have ATIP, and it trickles down to they're using information from a civil UFO group like UFO Sweden.
Yeah.
To me, it says something. And I think Lou Elizondo really wants this to be higher up in this
hierarchy.
Level. Yeah, absolutely. He wants it to be like it's going to be like now, that the observations are coming from the US Navy and the US Air Force instead of the public.
Yeah, it is a game changer, because earlier it's been ridiculed a lot on that level, but now it's taken seriously.
That is really true, and that's happened before the report is even published.
Yeah.
And for me, I've been into this business since early 1970s. I'm very glad that this is happening, because so many observers have come forward and been ridiculed during the years.
Yeah.
And they are just telling what they saw. Of course, they don't know what they saw. But their stories, I mean, you must listen to them. You cannot just laugh at them. You must take them seriously, see if you can find an explanation, and treat them properly. And now this is really going to go in that direction, thanks to the politicians and what's happening in the US.
Did you think that would happen in your lifetime?
No, really not. This is exciting.
Yeah.
This is the most exciting part of this story, really, that we now can discuss UFOs in a proper manner. I mean, UFOs are just unidentified flying objects. I want to know what lies behind that. And of course, many people would like to know that. So now we can discuss it.
Yeah, that's good. And media in the United States are actually calling you to ask about this report that's coming, and in Britain and in many other countries.
It's nice. It's nice to be in demand. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at some earlier hotly debated possible visits from other civilizations. I mean, who knows? And this is high and low, very different types of sightings and observations. First, I want to ask about this Oumuamua in 2017. You know, this strange object that entered our solar system and came fairly close to Earth, and it didn't actually arrive at Earth, but it was observed and by astronomers. And this I think Israeli physician Avi Loeb.
Yeah.
Loeb, he said to the shock of many of his colleagues that we have to take into account the possibility that this is something extraterrestrial, that this is from some kind of civilization. What's your take on that one?
Yeah, I was in contact with Avi a couple of hours ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he sent me an email.
You talk to everyone.
Yeah. I try to. He said, "Good to hear from you. As of now," he says, "I hope to be engaged in a scientific experiment that collects open scientific data on UFOs, UAPs." So he's taken a step forward.
A step further, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Avi is a Harvard professor and is a very high-ranking astronomer. Mm. But his theory is that this Oumuamua object was something made by another civilization. Is of course very much in dispute from the scientific community. One thing I should say about Oumuamua, many people think that it flew into our solar system. It was the other way. Oumuamua was resting in space.
Okay, so
and we were colliding with
I see.
with its.
Well, everything is relative, so I mean, it depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, but it was not looking for us.
I see.
We just happened to pass where it was sitting in space. He has no proof really about this being something out of the ordinary. The things he mentioned is that it accelerated in a way when it had went around the sun and were going out from the solar system again. It accelerated in a way that was not easy to explain from ordinary physics. He thinks that it must have been a solar sail that was collecting the power from the solar rays, from the particles coming from the sun. And it was giving a push and accelerating out. That is very hard to explain if it was just a stone. It couldn't really work out that. But other scientists say that it was some sort of gas coming out of the stone, like from a comet. When you see a comet, you see a trail.
Yeah, but there was no trail here, was it?
It wasn't a trail that could be seen, but there are, of course, trails, hydrogen trails and other trails that are very hard to see, and it was very far away. There are no pictures of Oumuamua, even though we have seen so many drawings of it.
Yeah, drawings, yeah.
Nobody has seen it, really. They only done those measurements that show that it was rotating. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the most plausible explanation is probably that it's some kind of asteroid, then.
Yeah, that's the most plausible, of course.
But it moved very much more slowly than an asteroid normally does.
Yeah, but again, it was sitting there and we were colliding with it. So maybe it really isn't the biggest problem. And just a couple of years after that, or maybe a year, another object turned up in the solar system that was also from an interstellar source. Mm. And that we know was a comet. Okay. But of course, we have only seen two things like this over the years, as long as we have telescopes. So there may be loads of them.
Yeah.
And Avi Loeb tells me that we have to wait for the next one, and we have to be prepared at that time. We must have better telescopes. We must be prepared to send a probe, maybe. Mm. And we were taken aback when really.
Yeah, I was fascinated when I read about it, and it wasn't out until a year or two after it actually happened.
It was out earlier, really, but it was
in the general public. It was later.
Yeah.
So then there are so many spectacular, mobile phone films out there. There are loads of them, and to a layman, you can see that some are probably fake, but then sometimes, once in a while, I as a layman, I run into TV programs and YouTube videos that look really, I mean, what's the word? Well, they look trustworthy anyway, and you have these people talking about it, even so-called experts. And I saw these films of pyramid-shaped objects turning over the,
Moscow?
The Kremlin in 2008, and then over the Pentagon in 2018. So what's that to you?
Well,
the
Pentagon I have not seen any good source to. I think that is really pure fabric. The Moscow thing, very strange. Not a single person saw it. There is not a single witness beside the guy who filmed it.
Yeah, I think there were 3 or 4 people who had.
Oh, they've never been interviewed by any researchers. Maybe they've been mentioned that there are several witnesses, but there are no. I mean, I know so many Russian ufologists and also ufologists in the East. And nobody has been able to track any of those down to validate what happened really. I really don't take those kind of films that turns up. No, I've got films every second day.
Yeah, you must.
Sent to me, and not only from YouTube, but from ordinary people who have their mobiles with them, and they are so bad. I mean, we have had those mobiles for so many years now, and you should think that there should be very good film clips.
Yeah.
There are very, very, very few of them, and the pictures are even worse.
Yeah.
So, and that tells me that the UFOs are not common. It's a very, very scarce phenomena, really. That I mean, UFO Sweden investigates around 300 observations, reports every year, and it's not every year that one of them will be labeled UFO.
Okay.
Not every year. So,
not even every year is one being labeled UFO. Yeah, that says something.
It does, and but the internet is pouring out.
What did you say to me the other day? You called it noise.
You,
it's noise.
It's very much a noise, and the noise fills my days. And I would be glad to keep that noise level down a little. And of course, the military tells me in Sweden as well that they call it noise as well. They don't want this in their report system because when an enemy is coming, they don't want hundreds of UFO reports clogging the system.
Of course.
They want the bona fide stuff, the things that they could do something about.
Yeah, that's understandable. So what about, I mean, there are also some very, very compelling, that's the word I was looking for, images have been over the years, of course, not thousands, but a couple of dozen. I don't know, you got the figures better than me. But for instance, there was one photo that is sometimes labeled as this is the best, the clearest UFO photo ever taken in the history of photography, and it's the photo over Lake Cote in Costa Rica in 1971. It was a surveillance plane or a plane that was taking photos, I think, over the ground to make maps or something afterwards. So it was a plane flying slowly over the area there and taking there was a camera underneath the plane, and it was taking one picture every 20 seconds.
It's a daylight picture.
Daylight picture, and so the pilots and the personnel, the staff in the plane, they didn't look in the camera. So they just after they landed and developed the film, they could see that one of the hundreds of frames that they got, showed this very interesting object. It was like a flying saucer, you know. Looks like a disc, and it's metallic, and it's
a black spot in the middle, like a shadow.
I think it's a shadow in the middle, and it's just over the lake.
Yeah.
So and Costa Rica isn't a military nation, so I think they released this picture pretty early. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a very good picture. You can say that, and I never really seen any investigation into that. I've seen it published many times. But I never seen any report made. Not a single. One should think that the Air Force in Costa Rica or whatever they have there, the military.
Well, they don't have any military. That's the problem. They only have a police force.
But one would think that the Americans, because American ufologists or whatever, they have never investigated it. It's very sad. Because I really want to know more about it. As you say, it's a very, very intriguing picture. if it's the best in the world, I wouldn't say, because there's so many pictures being said to be the best in the world. I have seen others.
Yeah,
that
you pick a couple of examples. I mean, you're the expert. What would you give us 2 examples of good sightings, good shots?
Yeah, most of the sightings are not accompanied by a shot. I'm sorry to say. When it comes to pictures, as the Costa Rica picture, they didn't see it with their eyes, that is bad.
That's bad, yeah.
That is bad. So seeing and taking pictures are often not combined. I talked with a lady in British Columbia who took one of the most famous UFO pictures ever, and you can see it in clear daylight. It's a mountain and it's a small cloud, and over the cloud you can see this really, really clear flying saucer. She never saw it when she took the picture. She took the picture of this nice mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And a long time afterwards she developed it and she found it. And I talked to her and she's fine. I mean, no problem as far as I can see. But that is often the way it goes. So it's often the stories. I mean, I met a Swedish military fighter pilot who was chasing one of those objects. And that, to me, made a very, very big impression, because he kept his stories silent for so many years. It happened in 1977. But in 1999, he was up in Luleå at F-21, which is the fighter unit in the north of Sweden, Swedish Air Force. He met another guy who said, you should tell this to UFO Sweden. So he called us. And I made a long interview with him. And his name is Sven Hjalmarsson. And this was a last interview, because he crashed with the helicopter half a year after that. And everyone aboard died.
Oh, yeah.
So, but he told me that he was flying outside the island of Öland and Gotland, out in the Baltic, on a training missions in 1977 in the summer. It was the middle of the day. And the radar unit on ground, who was leading him, told him that he must go and identify an unknown that was approaching Sweden from the east. So he went there. He was alone in his Draken, his Dragon aircraft, which was the top-notch Swedish fighter
at the time.
Yeah, and it was a very, very good aircraft, even internationally. So when he approached this object, he suddenly sees it on his radar as well, and he locks on it so he can follow it. It was at that time around 10 kilometers above sea level. It was resting there, really sitting still.
Oh, really?
And that was strange. I thought it was stopped there. But at one point, maybe half a minute later, the object seems to detect him. So it starts to climb. And he also starts to climb and to try to catch it. And he starts his afterburner, which means that he's flying his aircraft as fast as he can. Really. And he's at that point in 70 degrees angle.
Oh,
which
that's
is
steep.
very steep. I mean, a little more and he can
tip over.
He can do, absolutely. And he tells me that he tried to fly as close as he could to this object, but he was outflown. And the object, as he tells me, vanishes right out into space. But he didn't report this because it was so strange. So he never told the radar unit on the ground what he saw. He just said that this object was gone when I came there. But to me, he said, to be able to, from a point that you're not moving at all, to fly as fast and more as this fighter jet could do. Nothing could do that at that time. And you can hear these stories very much alike the Tic Tac stories. I mean,
yeah, it sounds a bit about the same. But what did it look like? What did he tell you, Hjalmarsson, about the looks of this object?
He could never see it with his eyes. He could only see it on his radar.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. And it was still around 10 kilometers away from him when he was as close.
But the radar did record it, so you could see it on the radar afterwards?
Yeah, he could see it on the radar all the way, but it was not recorded.
Okay,
no.
Maybe they didn't record at that time.
No, they didn't. And of course, the radar on the ground, they record. But most of those files are destroyed, and it wouldn't have been if he had reported it, of course.
Yeah.
At that time, it was so many intrusions from the east that this was just one of many. But this was not anything like anything else he had seen in his whole life, he told me.
But of course, they could see on the ground, and also when they checked the flight, the black box, I don't know what it's called, that he actually did this maneuver, this spectacular maneuver.
They could have, if he had reported this, it would have been taken care of course.
Yeah.
But he didn't, and nothing was
So
done.
for all the others, for all what the others know, he could have just dreamt the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. He could have. When he came home that night, his wife tells me that he was all shaken up, and he said that this I saw today was nothing I could explain at all.
Otherworldly.
Yeah.
Interesting. You're going just in a couple of days to southern Sweden to look into an event that took place 60 years ago or something.
75.
Like that. 75 years. Yeah. Okay. So it's an anniversary.
It is.
Tell us a little bit about that.
It's called the most well-known Swedish close encounter when it comes to UFOs. It happened May 18th, 1946, and the man who told the story, Gösta Karlsson, he's very, very well known when it comes to Rögle hockey, the team that played the finals in the Swedish Hockey League this year. One of the best teams in Sweden nowadays.
Yeah.
But at that point in the 1970s, when he was involved in Rögle, he bought from his own money some of the most famous players at that time. He brought home Ulf Sterner from New York Rangers. He paid for him to play for Rögle. And also a lot of other people, like Tom Haug and people like are very well known outside Sweden as well. And he did that from money he earned from a business, pollen business. And this pollen business is still a big business. And that idea to this pollen business, he got from the guys he met in this clearing, May 18th, 1946. If you go back to this evening, it was around 10 o'clock in the evening. He was out walking. He had a small light, what do you call it, around his head.
Yeah, on the forehead. Is a lamp on the forehead?
Yeah.
I don't know what to call it.
There's probably a word for it.
A torch, forehead torch.
Yeah, a small torch anyway. He was out in near the water, and he walked back to his bicycle that was waiting a couple of 100 meters up the road. And at that point he saw something in the woods that he thought was a fire. And he thought, I must check this. It could be something burning. So he walked into the forest, and instead of a fire, he met what he thought was something like a carnival carousel. But it wasn't. It was really much more like a flying saucer with a light coming down in a bent way. So the light was bending towards the ground. And around this craft, you could see several people working, repairing something. And one of those really looked like an ordinary human being, dressed in completely white. And he stopped him. It was like a sentinel. But just walked a little closer, and he could see some of the girls working there were throwing out something from the craft, and it passed this circle of light, and it was like a small sparkle. And then this sentinel, he took some sort of box and pointed to Gösta, and then his lamp clicked. So he walked away, and I thought that maybe I could take another way around and see if I can sneak on them from behind. So he went down to the water, but at that point he saw the object lifting from the woods. The next day he went back there, and he saw traces from what he thought from this craft. And he also found staff of crystal and a ring, golden ring with a stone, and two mugs with some kind of liquid in it.
Did he preserve these objects that he found?
In a way. In a fire, those two mugs was said to be destroyed, but I have seen the other objects. I've held them in my hand. And
the ring is made out of ordinary earthly metal?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing special.
There's nothing strange about that.
Yeah.
But this crystal rod, according to Gösta, which is now passed away since many years ago, I followed him for more than 20 years.
Okay.
This was made from unknown minerals that is not known on Earth, but I was promised to get this after his passing away.
Okay.
I didn't get it. I was also promised to be able to analyze it. I haven't been able to do that.
That's a pity.
It's very much a pity. So anyway, I wrote a book about this, and it's coming out in a new edition in a couple of weeks. And it's a strange story. So many questions, so many things that are not adding up. But it's the most well-known story when it comes to UFOs here in Sweden.
Yeah, fascinating. So it's 75-year anniversary coming up here now. You've interviewed so many people who have had seen UFOs, who have seen UFOs and had these sightings. And how many other people that you get in contact with have credible stories? What's the proportion of, stories that can't really be explained by something ordinary, so to speak? Is it 1% or 50% or?
One thing is credible. Most people are credible. I should say. Very few are trying to fool me or hoax me. Some are. But most people don't really know much about the heavens or what kind of stars and planets you can see. They don't know anything about how an aircraft looks like, even that. So the credible stories, we found maybe 98-99% explanations to. And there are maybe 1 or 2% that are very, very hard to see an easy explanation to. And I got many stories, so there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I don't only get UFO stories. I get people who tells me they have met gnomes.
Yeah. You told me about that once. Yeah.
That is today. It's
leprechauns, gnomes. Yeah.
One would think that this is something that is way back in the 1800s or something like that. But it's happening now.
And talking about the 1800s, these days we had the moon landings, we have the space programs. Well, back in 1946, we didn't have any space programs, but still, in our days, people can easily conjure up some kind of space traveling. But these UFO sightings, they go way back, don't they? There have been documentations hundreds of years ago.
They do. I'm in a small group called Magonia on the internet. We are maybe 20 people trying to find observations before 1947. And we are combing all literature and newspapers and whatever. There are lots of them. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. But the interesting thing is that connecting those UFOs to visits from other worlds is very new.
Okay.
In 1946, Sweden was the epicenter for a large UFO wave called the ghost rockets. Even Norway and Finland had those ghost rockets, but Sweden was really the core. And it was written hundreds and hundreds of articles in Swedish newspapers. The military spent a year with a special committee, like the UAPTF, There have been committees long before the US started it.
Yeah.
And they didn't really find out what was behind those ghost rockets. But not a single line about aliens. No one ever thought of aliens in 1946.
Wow. So, and you hear about abductions and telepathic contact also. This is all connected to the sightings, and you hear about that, of course.
Yeah.
Too. Do you dive deep into those things? What do you think about those things? Not just sightings, but
no. Those are really the most fascinating because you can see whatever you want in the sky. It could be anything really, if you are really hard. But when it comes to meeting entities, and if you are several people seeing them, that's of course very interesting. And I met a couple down in the south of Sweden in the 90s. They have written to me after reading my book about Gösta Karlsson, really. And the man in the family asked me to come down to listen to their story. what he had forgotten was to tell his wife that I was coming. So she wasn't that really into sitting down with me, a stranger, telling about this. But in a couple of hours, we were sitting there talking about it. And she, who was really the prime source of it, she told me that when I'm sleeping, I get to bed, the sheets are under my cheek, and I fell asleep. And I wake up the next morning like that. I'm a very good sleeper. I don't wake up and walk around. But this night, she woke up floating over the bed.
Oh.
Curled like a fetus, and with her face downwards to the bed. And it was a strange light in the room. It should have been dark, but it was a light. So you could see her husband sleeping, sound asleep, beside her. And she was feeling that she was dragged out of the bed, floating and dragged. So she tried to call her husband, but she couldn't. She was like that. She couldn't say anything. So instead, she grabbed his arm. And he tells me that he wakes up of this touch. And he can see her floating over the bed towards 3 entities that were standing beside the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And those entities were classical Whitley Strieber aliens, really. No hair, small mouth, small nostrils.
Almond-shaped eyes.
Absolutely little tilted like that. And one was a little larger, the other one were a little smaller. And he thought, what shall I do? What shall I do? So he tried to kick at them. So he tried really to punch them with his foot. And when he did that, it all went dark. Mm-hmm. And he heard a pounce. And at that time, his wife were floating outside the bed, so she was falling down on the floor.
She fell on the floor.
And if you think that is strange, the next thing that happened is even more strange, because she just went up into bed and they said to each other, what was that? I have no idea. And I fell asleep again. That is not common behavior.
It's not common behavior. I wouldn't have a second of sleep after that kind of experience, I can tell you.
But that goes with this strange phenomena, really. This is a phenomenal complex of things. And it happens something to people that experiences things like that. Or maybe it's connected to the people. I don't know.
Now that you tell this story, I remember my dad, who passed away last year, and his wife, second wife, they said that they saw some kind of entity one night. They woke up simultaneously and saw some kind of entity floating above their bed, and they were really scared. They got really scared. But they didn't. There was no evidence of it, and they didn't take any pictures, obviously. So I just.
But they saw it, both of them.
Yeah, both of them told me and my wife that they had seen this. This was maybe 10 years ago or so.
That is interesting. As long as it's 2 persons, of course, it's more interesting.
Yeah, that's true. This is all these things are so fascinating, but you're a very down-to-earth person, and I know you as a journalistic colleague. I remember when we worked together, I remember you as a very, very skilled reporter and very down-to-earth, as I said, and practical, and sometimes realistic, almost to the point of coarseness. So, and also when you write about these things in articles and in your blog, you always stress the low likelihood of this being something real. But still, you continue doing this with gusto, and so why?
Year after year, it's a good question. It's a good question.
And also, why did you become so fascinated when you were a kid? Because you began doing this when you were very young.
Yeah.
What do you think was it with it that made you so fascinated?
I'm born in 1958, so in the late 60s, I started to read about astronomy mostly. I got astronomy books at Christmas. I love them. But in the early 70s, I started to read about flying saucers and UFOs. And I also got those kinds of books in the Christmas presents. And I was really curious. I wanted to know what people really saw. So in 1974, I was 16. I founded a small UFO society in Mariestad, where I'm born. And we were a couple of guys not a single girl, of course. A couple of guys that were really investigating. We were out in the field and recording people, taking pictures, filling out forms, and doing everything we could to find an explanation. And I realized that we could at many times, but not always. And of course, this product at the end of all those investigations are keeping my interest.
Yeah.
But not only that, I'm also interested in why people report things that are not as what they thought from the beginning. I'm very interested in how people think, what is behind us. Why do we believe in things that are so hard to prove? So all this combined keeps me going, really. So every day is a new day with very much excitement.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's really fantastic. So let's go a little bit philosophical for a minute, as you actually were here. I mean, like you said, why are people reporting things that aren't really that we aren't able to corroborate with I mean, three-dimensional gauges? If let's say if no extra, we go decades into the future, maybe a century, 2 centuries from now. Let's say no extraterrestrial spaceship ever lands, and we never have a close encounter with ETs. Will people eventually stop reporting UFO sightings?
Interesting question. No, I don't think so, because
why?
If you go back a couple of 100 years, people were reporting, I mean, they were taking notes, or they were putting it down on paper, not reporting it to any UFO society, of course. But they were seeing things in the sky that were strange, and they didn't have any context about alien beings. At that time, at that point, they thought it was something maybe
religious?
Exactly. Sent from God.
Yeah.
And not only that, natural phenomena were in high demand. If you look down in the 1700s and 1800s, the newspapers were filled by reports of very, very strange things in the sky. And we were very curious at that time about how the world was really functioning. Yeah. So I think in the future we will also have this demand for something more in our lives, something that makes the dullness of going to work or whatever you do a little more exciting, a little more to think of and to discuss with your friends. So we will never get rid of the UFOs.
Yeah, there is a saying, or it's not a saying really, it's something that people often say, that I believe it when I see it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you can turn that around actually. I see it when I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true too. And we're not especially not in the West, we're not used to looking at things that way. But the question is, can you see anything if you don't believe? I mean, you have to believe that the world is round to see that it's round. I mean, that's a stupid example, but if you believe in things, maybe you start seeing them. I mean, it's philosophical, and maybe it sounds a bit strange, but do you see my point here?
Yeah, I see your point. When it comes to seeing things that you don't believe, it happens all the time when it comes to UFOs, because people tell us, "Oh, I saw this and I never believed I should."
That's true, yeah.
So that way it's easy to understand. If you can see things because you believe in them, that I don't really know, but well, it could be possible, I think, in some way. But in that respect, you create your reality, and in a way we do.
In a way we do, yeah.
I mean, we are just putting signals into our brains all the time and building our reality. Oh, I lost the word now. Reality.
Yeah.
I mean, this table is mostly air or vacuum or whatever. It's nothing. It's just molecules that you could really are not sitting together in any way.
No, it's 99.9999% vacuum, as we would call it. But the vacuum is also packed with energy.
It is.
Albeit.
So it's a strange world. I mean, I don't have the answers, and I'm really open to that. Will be new answers in a couple of 100 years that we don't even now today can think of. So we must be very open to looking in new directions. If we don't do that, we don't find anything.
Yeah, that's the thing with UFOs and extraterrestrial. I mean, if there are civilizations out there, I think we're not alone. But I mean, just what I think. I can't prove it, but would be very, very peculiar if we were the only civilized civilization in the universe. Anyway, if they are able to come here in some way, it means that they have some kind of technology that would probably be able to tweak dimensions and be able to utilize, different vibrations, which means that they wouldn't need any propulsion system, so they wouldn't need these old-fashioned rockets or so, which also means that they might not be visible to us for the most part. And then they can. I mean, this is something that you hear. I know that you've been talking about this. That people say that they saw this UFO. It was so clear, and then all of a sudden it was gone. And so that might be a thing, that they might be here all the time, perhaps, and they just show themselves to us in a three-dimensional way, so that we can see them with our senses occasionally, and then most of the time we can't see them, or feel them, or hear them, or.
I mean, if they are coming here from far away, and so often as they are reported, they must be able to travel in ways that we don't understand.
Yeah.
That is for sure. If you ask Avi Loeb, he don't think that. He thinks they are traveling by ordinary physical means, by solar sails. That is possible to travel very, very fast. And if you want to populate the galaxy, you can do that in not too many thousands of years if you do it the right way. So, I mean...
Let's do it. Let's populate the galaxy.
I'll let the sci-fi authors do that, I think. I don't have time to do it. I mean, those questions are discussed by physicists, of course, and I don't understand the mathematics behind this. I will absolutely be the first to say. But I'm open to that it will be revelations within the science, the boundaries of science, that are so new to us that we feel that they are nearly magic.
Yeah. And I mean, progress is, within progress lies the idea that you can envisage something that isn't here now. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any progress. I mean, the ability to think
out of the box.
Think out of the box is the old expression, yeah. So maybe it's, I mean, it would be so much less interesting, so much more boring to live your life as if nothing that you can measure with three-dimensional gauges exist.
Absolutely. I mean, it's and it's very counterproductive to think like that as well. I mean, and I think the good scientists, they are really thinking out of the box. They are doing the quantum leaps from time to time that nobody has seen before. I mean, if you're an Einstein or whatever, or a Newton, you were thinking in new ways of the universe and how the world is constituted. So I hope I will live for many, many years, because I want to know as much as I can.
Yeah, or maybe in the next life.
Yeah,
who knows?
hopefully. If you're in the next life, I think you are not very interested in this life. So
probably. You're probably right there. So yeah, me too. I would like to live for a long time in this life, on this world. So
let's try.
I'm also curious. Let's try it. Claus, this has been fantastic. Do you have a website? Where can people find your books and your work most easily?
UFO.se is our website, and I have a blog there. I'm also at AFU.se, which is the world's largest UFO archive, which I am chairman of.
IFU.se?
Yeah, Archives for the Unexplained. And that I work with every day, really, and trying to save collections and files from all around the world. And it's a huge depository of knowledge.
Yeah. And you're so incredibly industrious. I don't understand how you do it. Thank you, Claus. Thank you for joining the show. It's been a joy and an education.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anders.